All right, welcome to the podcast. Really excited about today's guest. I have on writer, director TJ Noel-Sullivan of the new film Midas. Thanks for being on the show. Well, I was looking into the film. It's fascinating. I really love the concept behind it. It almost has like this Robin Hood-esque quality to it. But before we really dive into the film, I want to get a little bit about your origin story, like what led you to filmmaking, how you got into making Midas. I saw that you did a bunch of shorts. This seems like it might be your first feature, which is really fascinating.
Yeah,
So let's kind of get into your origin story.
sure. Yeah. So I grew up, I can't say I was actually that big of a film person. My parents had pretty strict limits on how much film and TV I could watch, but I was a big
Okay.
reader. So I think the rule in my household was for every hour of TV I wanted to watch, I had to do 2 hours worth of reading. And so I
Wow.
grew up with a lot of stories. And to some extent, I also think that like film and TV kind of became the holy grail for me because it was the privilege to be able to watch film or TV. Um, and so I, grew up really loving stories. And it wasn't really until high school, going into my senior year of high school, there was this program. I'm born and raised in Hartford, Connecticut. And there was a program for 15 high school students in the area to spend the summer at an independent cinema, watching movies and learning how to make movies. They brought in kind of a
Sounds
filmmaking
like heaven.
instructor. So every single morning we would go into this theater and watch, the canon of film, and then in the afternoon learn the basic techniques of filmmaking. And I just absolutely loved that opportunity to be able to write my own script and tell stories myself. I found that to be so cool, and I really caught the bug there. And so a year later, when I went off to college, I said, this is really fascinating to me. I hadn't considered film as a career at all, really, up until that point, but said, you know what, let me try taking some film studies classes. Really loved those. And that kind of got me started on the path of 4 years of college, making a lot of shorts, making mistakes along the way. I think that's one of the big things that I tell other students and filmmakers is, for me, such a big part of my path has been making mistakes and learning what I don't want to do or learning what not to do, and then being able to make those corrections and continue on my path. And so I graduated from college. It was a little bit of a weird time, COVID was just starting up, and so but ended up getting a job at Mattel Films out in LA, which was a really great time to be there. Getting to kind of see some of the behind the scenes on Barbie as that was happening, and a bunch of
That's
other really
cool.
cool projects. And the whole time, during that time, I had written the script for Midas and was getting, notes and revisions on that. And finally, when I said, okay, I think this is ready to go, and was lucky enough to be in a position to have the financing to make that happen, we went and shot the movie.
So one thing I've noticed with indie filmmakers, because I've worked with directors, I've worked with producers, and there's kind of a couple of different mindsets. One of them is, we're going to cast the big name actors so we can get their face on the poster, we can say they're in it. We bring them in, we shoot them for 2 days. They're not really in the film, right? The other aspect I see is we're just going to make the best damn film possible. I'm going to focus on chemistry. I'm going to focus on local talent. We're going to do a huge broad net, see who we can get. And looking at the film, the chemistry is there. The talent is there. So I feel like that's what you're focusing on. And I want to get kind of more of that from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got lucky in some ways of, number one, we were able to find such incredible cast that just like, I remember, we did some chemistry reads with them, and our trio, Laquan, Preet, and Federico, who are the three best friends, they did their first take of their chemistry, and I was like, they feel like best friends. They had met each other 2 minutes ago, but immediately
That's
they
cool.
felt like best friends, and I immediately bought that they had been best friends since they were kids. And I think that's, sometimes it just is luck to happen to have the three right
Mm-hmm.
people who, we saw a bunch of really great actors as we were casting these roles, but to have those three people just kind of immediately form that bond. And to this day, they're still really good friends, which I think
Really.
speaks to our casting that, they have a group chat and are texting in it just about every day, despite living
That's
on opposite
incredible.
sides of the country. But I think the other thing is I'm a really big believer that on-set vibe is such an important piece of capturing a movie and the culture that you build on set. And so one of the things that I really appreciated and that I actually was kind of looking for in our casting process is raw talent, but also what their attitude was. Were they going to be the kind of person that came to set every day, was excited to be making this movie, and was doing everything they could to kind of contribute to a positive on-set culture? And I think that, one of the concerns that I had when we were thinking about maybe trying to go out and do what you said of, find a bigger named actor and bring them in for 2 days and try and shoot them out as quickly as possible for budget reasons, is that takes a toll on everybody else, right? Oftentimes you have to schedule around it. And so you have these kind of wacky schedules where you're shooting crazy overnights or you're pushing crews to the limit. And I really didn't want to do that. One of the things that we did on Midas that I'm really proud of is we stuck to 10-hour days. We said, no matter what, we are really going to, protect crew health. And so for most days that meant, 9 a.m. call, 7 p.m. wrap. People got to go home, eat dinner, maybe watch a movie before starting the next day.
They loved you, man.
But I think you can feel that on set. I think when you wrap at 7 and you come in the next day, people are energized, people are ready to go again. It's when you work those, and I've been on plenty of sets that work 15, 16-hour days, and you come in the next day and everybody's like still half asleep. And so I do think that by committing to it and saying, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to, really build a positive on-set culture and have good working hours and all those kinds of things. I think that's really important to having a team of people, especially on the indie level when, you're not paying people their full rates necessarily, right? You're getting them to come on because they believe in the project. And oftentimes you're kind of asking really talented people to come on passion or they're getting paid, but they're not doing it for the money necessarily.
Yeah.
So I think treating them right is an important piece of that.
Well, let's talk about the film. I love the concept that, stealing from an insurance juggernaut. I think that is awesome. It feels like a modern day Robin Hood film. You automatically paint the villain. Nobody likes insurance. It always feels like a scam. But from what I understand, you went through a lot of drafts before you landed on this. So can you walk me through the evolution of Midas, of a heist film into being this current?
Yeah. So, I love heist films, and I think that was the initial seed. I just absolutely love films like Ocean's 11 are, top of some of my favorite movie lists. And I had this idea way back in 2018. I had this idea for a heist movie that kind of takes a turn. So the first 2/3 of the movie is your standard heist film, and then it takes this turn. They uncover something, and it takes a slightly darker turn. And I, for various things, I wrote out a beat sheet for it and it was exploring. And initially, the company they were going to be robbing was a tech giant because, at the time, there was all sorts of conversations about some of the ethical questions around these tech companies. And I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. They set out to rob a tech company, and in the process, they uncover a, ethical challenge from one of the tech companies. And I kind of had that idea, and I had been playing with it. And, characters were kind of changing. How big was the team that was going to do it? Was it I think there was a version that there was like an 11-person team. There was a version that it was a 3-person team, was playing with different sizes and scales of cast and things like that. And then what happened was COVID hit, and I was here in Hartford and kind of said to myself, you know what? I also, the last short I had done, which was a short film called On the Whistle, we had filmed in Hartford. And I had really just been blown away by the amount of community support, which I should have known. It's my hometown and have a lot of supporters and people who have been so invested in my career here. But we shot the short, and I was like, making a movie in Hartford was so much easier because of the community support we were receiving.
That's awesome.
And so I was talking to a mentor of mine and said, I think I'm ready to shoot my first feature. I have this idea, and I think I might shoot it in Hartford. And he said to me, well, why is it set in Hartford? And I was like, well, I'm just explain to you that, the community support. And he's like, I understand why you're shooting it in Hartford, but why would you set it in Hartford? I need the narrative justification. And that's what clicked for me, because I went, oh, okay, if we're shooting in Hartford, they're not robbing a big tech company. Hartford is the health insurance capital of the world.
Oh,
They should be robbing a health insurance company. And it was really it was a light bulb moment. It was during COVID when we had plenty of time on our hands, and it was this light bulb moment where in 3 days, I immediately after I got off the phone with him, I wrote out the whole beat sheet for the film, and I just jumped into the script, and in 3 days powered through the first draft of the script.
Incredible.
And it really just clicked of, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
if it's a health insurance company, then the motivation is his mom has been denied coverage, and it all just really fit together.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? It's I think as a screenwriter, oftentimes you'll have these pieces, or at least I have these ideas where I'll be like, okay, I really like this idea, but it doesn't feel like it's clicking. And that was me with this project for 2 years. I had this idea in my head. I knew kind of what the structure of the film was going to be. I knew some of the larger themes I wanted to have in it, but I just couldn't, it wasn't clicking for me. And suddenly I had this one conversation and immediately it clicked. And obviously, there were revisions after that draft, but that structure is pretty, the characters from that draft, the structure of the film, a lot of that stayed very constant throughout all the revision process.
So you had the bones there, really. Like the bones of the story were there. Man, that's the power of a mentor, though, to just softly challenge you like that, and then you step up to the challenge, and it totally changes the whole script and into like the flow of what it should have been, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you this question, just because I know it's the elephant in the room, but everybody always wants to know from indie writers, indie screenwriting directors, like how did you get financing? How difficult was it? Were you doing the pitch deck thing, and like were you going to everybody trying to fund? Were you doing the GoFundMe thing?
Yeah, I mean, so it is definitely the hardest process, and we tried to go everywhere, and we're pitching it out to production companies of all sizes, and got some meetings out of it. Had a good team around me of producers and stuff that were helping set up meetings and pitch it. And one of the things that we kind of kept hearing was, oh, well, we like the script. It's a fun script, but, we think you need to do it on a bigger budget. But it was this chicken and the egg thing of also like, I'm a first time feature writer director.
Sure.
And so people were like, maybe we'd be interested in acquiring the script and giving to someone else to direct. And for me, I got into screenwriting because early on in my career, someone said to me, if you want to direct a good first feature, you're going to have to write it because nobody's going to give you a good script
That's
if you've never directed a feature before. And so that's what the impetus was. And so when I had those conversations, people said, well, maybe, be interested in buying it to have someone else direct it. I was like, no. I wrote this script so that I could direct it. And that was really key for me. And so long story short, after, what was really probably over a year of pitching it out and talking to different people, right? Like,
wow,
started that process pretty early on. Eventually we got to the point where me and my producer sat down and we said, hey, what is the budget at which we can make this film the right way? Like, we don't want to, on a total shoestring budget of shooting on weekends. We want to shoot for 20 days, bring on the cast and crew that we want, and be able to do this right. What is the budget that we need? And then we went out, and what we did actually, what was the most successful, we put together a Hartford pitch deck. We put together a pitch deck that specifically talked about shooting the movie here in Hartford, how it was going to showcase the city, what the impact was going to be. And we brought it to people in the area and said, hey, here's this project.
That's
and, right, I have to say that I was fortunate enough to kind of be in a position where amongst circles, I could get this in front of people that had, a checkbook that they could write some checks to help make this happen. But that was really what we did, was we kind of pitched people locally. We had tried the Hollywood financier route, and for one reason or the other, it wasn't going to work out. And we said, you know what, let's make this locally. This is a movie that showcases the city, and there's a lot of excitement and pride around that. And that's how we got it made.
I mean, this is awesome. So I've been telling, the biggest question I get from people is, how do I get my stuff made? How do I do this? And I've been telling them locally. I work with local directors and producers. I get stuff made. Everybody's trying to go to LA. I've had people from Europe ask me to help them get to LA, and I'm like, they're making movies over there, So locally, and TJ, I'm going to use you as like my guy. Like, do what TJ did. He made it happen. He's got an awesome film. because you're the example. You've set the bar. You can do it. But what I love that you just told me is like you did a specific pitch deck for local. And I
Yeah.
don't think people are considering that. I think they have their general pitch deck. They send it to LA. Maybe they send it to a few local producers. But if you're doing it specifically, like we're going to shoot here, we want to use, local cast, local actors. I think that is so smart. Man, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I'll say the other piece, beyond just, raising the money, the other key piece in it was as we were actually going into production on it, we continued to use that deck to help us secure locations, right? And so we paid for almost no locations on the film. And
Oh,
part of that was we would
wow.
send this deck out and say, hey, this is what this is going to be for the city. And this is what, and people bought into that vision and wanted to be a part of it.
Amazing.
We had over 200 extras volunteer to come out for a variety of scenes.
Yeah.
There were some like 8-hour scenes that on a Tuesday we had 150 people volunteer to come out and be extras in that scene. And I think that was
beautiful.
Really we're pitching the movie beyond just, hey, can you give us money? But hey, can you support us? If you can't write us a check, you can support by volunteering your time.
Yeah.
We had some people, had a couple meals that like someone said, hey, I run a catering company. I can just donate some meals and I want to be a part of this project. And that was all really helpful.
But all of that stuff adds up, right? So you're not paying for location, you're saving on your budget. You're not paying to have to feed 200 people. You're saving a huge amount on your budget. So, I mean, yeah, all of that makes total sense.
Yeah, I'll say at the end of it all, we ran some calculations and some estimates. Our estimate is that for every dollar cash we had $2 in kind, whether that was location fees we didn't have to pay, food, crew who said, hey, I really believe in this project. I'm going to cut my rate in half, that kind of thing. That was really important in making this all come together.
Yeah, and that becomes a pride of the area. Everybody will be talking about it, builds a buzz, and people want to, elevate where they live, where they work. And so you're providing that, hey, we're going to put this on screen, we're going to make this awesome, and it's going to be a local thing, and people will invest in that. Can you walk, because you mentioned earlier your biggest mistakes you learned because you've been doing short films and kind of working your way up. So do you have like a number one, biggest mistake that you've learned from off the top of your head?
I say I always try and make a new mistake on each film. And so like in thinking through my projects, like every time I would finish a project, I would go, okay, that was a mistake that I really want to focus on the next one. I want to learn. So I can tell you, like, from my last short, the last project that I did before Midas, it was our kind of my biggest project up until that point by far, and a really great experience. When we got into the edit room, I realized in directing, I hadn't been focusing on characters when they weren't speaking. I was always focusing on performances of speaking characters.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the small reactions to the moments that I wanted that were nonverbal, I hadn't captured. And so I kind of made
in your coverage, you weren't getting
my coverage.
It?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so
wow.
I made a note to myself on Midas on, every scene capturing not just the dialogue that I had written, but also making notes of, hey, I want to make sure I'm getting the nonverbal reactions that I want as well.
Wow.
And that was like, on my, when I'm shooting, I'll print out my shooting script and have, the script page. And then I'll also have on the other side, normally we'll have kind of our overhead diagram of what our shots for the day are, kind of what the blocking on that, all that is. And so it's kind of my blueprint that I'm a big believer in over prepare and then be willing in the moment to find moments of magic. But when those moments of magic aren't happening, you have your blueprint to go back to and say, I know what we need to do to get through this scene and get the coverage that we need. And on indie filmmaking, I think that's really important because, you can't, on an indie film, you can't just say, hey, let's take 2 hours while me and the DP just kind of talk through coverage on the scene or whatever. You kind of need to have a plan to be able to roll with when the clock is ticking. So anyway, that was one of the big mistakes that I made on the last one, on the last short, that I really brought into this one and said, hey, I really want to focus on that and make sure I'm getting those moments. I think pacing is the other one that just, I think pacing is takes time and experience to learn, because it's a feel thing on set of being able, like, and writing also, what may look great on the page, how that's actually going to translate to the pacing on screen. And for a heist movie,
Sure.
is so important. And so did a lot of thinking in this one about what is the pacing of these scenes going to be. And, as we're doing, especially for the heist moments, we had some pretty intricate camera shots with steady cams moving all around or coordinated dolly moves and that kind of thing. And I think a lot of the times we would get the take and be like, great, that was, camera looked good. And I'd be like, yes, but the pacing isn't quite right. I think we need to do another take where we go about 20% faster so that in the edit, this pacing is going to work. And that was, again, a lesson that I kind of learned on the last one of thinking not just about one specific shot, but how the pacing of multiple shots is going to fit together.
So any news on distribution or anything for Midas yet?
Yeah, so Midas comes to theaters this Friday, June 28th.
That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so we were acquired by Entertainment Squad earlier this year, and they've been absolutely great. And so we have our theatrical release will be in 20 cities for the theatrical release.
Wow.
And so far we sold out opening nights in New York, LA, and Hartford, which is really exciting. Kind of, I think New York and LA, just because those are where movies often happen. But Hartford, for me, I think is the especially cool one because it is that community support of all the people that were so excited to work on the film. As soon as we put tickets on sale, they immediately, invited all their friends and family. And I think we're going to be doing a 2-week run here in Hartford, or at least a 2-week run. Who knows? Maybe we'll get extended further. But,
TJ, you hit me with so many golden nuggets today. I mean, you're quickly becoming one of my favorite interviews on the 200 plus I've done. So before I let you go, is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have?
I think one of the interesting things that I've been in this position. So I mentioned that I first learned filmmaking at this summer program. This summer, I was invited to come back as one of the instructors for that program.
That's awesome.
Really cool, full circle moment. And so actually yesterday, the high school students who are all kind of getting their first exposure to filmmaking, they just started working on their first scripts. And it was really interesting to try and put into words, for a first time screenwriter, how to attack your project. But one of the things that I said to them that I think has been very true for me is working on a project that you're passionate about. Because on a feature film, right, for Midas, I didn't know at the time, but it ended up being 4 years of basically every day working on this project, whether it was script revisions or getting ready to shooting or the edit or distribution, right? It's a 4-year process. Wow. And I think that it's really important to have a project, not that you just say, oh, this is cool, this is a cool idea, but a project that you're really passionate about and are willing to, take all the way. I think that's one of my key pieces of advice to my students and to really any screenwriter is, you have to have that passion and be willing to, hopefully it's not 4 years, hopefully it's a much shorter process, but you want to be willing to stay with it for the long haul.
4 years is a huge swath of your life, really. And your passion was tested when they offered to option your script without you directing it. And the fact that you stood your ground and you're like, no, this is my baby. So much respect for that. So much. TJ, thanks for coming back, or thanks for coming on the show. The name of the film is Midas, and it's going to be out in theaters soon. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.